Hey everyone, and welcome back to this overview talking a little bit about what we discussed in Teaching Talk number 32, which happened a short time ago. And this had an open focus, and so anything that people wanted to talk about was fair game. And the cool thing was that it really started to coalesce around some issues related to COVID-19 and also some issues related to getting ready for winter quarter, which will be a topic here on our minds in the next few weeks and months for sure. And I think as we look at this list today, we can have a conversation later about how best to prioritize some of these issues. For example, should we do some workshops on these topics? How can we publicize some of these issues across the campus via student communication, faculty communication, doing more videos, or sending out updates that could direct you in some areas if you have concerns or you want to get help. For example, what if you have a student who needs help with food and they have food insecurity? We can connect you with Laura Salinas and the Equity Office and the Food Pantry. So there are issues here I think that could be useful for us to really talk about as a next step type of conversation, and that could affect some of the programming that we do here in teaching and learning in terms of the winter quarter, the workshops that interest you. The other thing that occurred to me is we can create some resources for you within Canvas. It'd be very easy, for example, to do a Canvas Commons template that might have some of these items listed, and then you could better prioritize these in your class. You can announce them to students. You have the resources that you need as faculty members to better help your students out in these challenging times of COVID-19. So let's talk about some of these issues, and then afterwards we can have a conversation about how best to address them in the future moving forward. So the first issue I think I'll address here is late work and COVID-19. So someone brought up the fact that some of the work is coming in late. How should you handle that as a faculty member? We always say that you have academic freedom as faculty members to best deal with late work or plagiarism or academic dishonesty in the ways that you see fit, following, of course, our college policies. And if you have any questions on those policies, let me know. I'll be happy to share you the Canvas Commons resources I created in this regard. In terms of late work, I think a conversation is how to balance that empathy side of things, being flexible as a faculty member, if you recall from a couple of our workshops on that topic, and the other side of the continuum, if you will, of trying to hold up academic standards, maintain academic integrity to make sure that the degree and class that a student is passing and receiving from the college means something. When we prove ourselves and get reaffirmed by an accrediting visiting team, of course, we have to show that our classes are academically rigorous and that we are focusing on making sure that students do the work they need to do per the law, the Title V outline that says they have to meet those standards that are defined on our course outline of record. So that's always a concern there. And I think in our conversations in the workshops, we said there's a balance somewhere in the middle between being flexible, truly flexible, and no due dates, and empathetic, and on the other end of that continuum, really making sure you have academic standards. So I think during COVID-19, we all realized that it's important to give students some accommodations if you feel that is fair and fit in terms of your academic standards in your class as you're teaching it. And if that's the case, just to make sure that that's fair across the board. It's certainly within your purview to ask for a doctor's note to make sure the student is legitimately diagnosed with COVID-19 or some other issue that prevents them from turning their work in on time. So be sure to get documentation if that's how you handle it in your class. Keep in mind in Canvas, it's very easy to set an assignment due date, and just below that you have available from and open until. So that way you can customize whether or not you want late work to come in, and you can decide there if you want to assign less points, deduct 10% of their grade or whatever for that assignment. So Canvas makes it possible, and I think in a lot of the cases we just need to make sure that we have the information that we need, in this case with Canvas, to assign late grades if that's the kind of thing we decided to do in our class because of COVID. So I think conversations going forward will be how can we make accommodations that are fair to the students and that are flexible, but also maintain those academic standards that are so important for our institution. The other issue here, we'll jump down, is a question about the Canvas inbox. And is it the best means for student communication? And how can we use Canvas inbox in such a way that students are aware of it, that they're using it, and that they're effectively communicating with you as an instructor? So certainly there's no way to say that it's the best way of communicating. Certainly you have a lot of options. You could use Canvas Inbox, and you want to make sure that students understand what it is and how it can be used. Reach out to me if you need a short video on that. I have a very short video that describes the Canvas Inbox and how it works. Keep in mind that whenever anyone logs on, including ourselves and our students, in that upper left-hand corner, you'll see a number indicating unread messages, not like your other Gmail or Yahoo Mail email programs that allow you to see you have a new or unread message. Now, it doesn't mean that students necessarily know where Canvas Inbox is, or it's the case that they have a new message. So it could be possible for you early in a quarter, if you're teaching a class and you're doing a virtual walkthrough, talk to your students about the inbox, tell them your expectations. We're required generally in our syllabi to put how long it'll take for us to communicate back with our students if they ask us a question in some way. So maybe a possible bonus quiz or something like that, a syllabus quiz early in the quarter, to make sure that the students know how to use Canvas Inbox, and they're also aware of your expectations as a faculty member in terms of communication. Now, it's not to say you can't use the email system. You could give your personal email. You could ask students to provide theirs. If you go to your roster via Passport, keep in mind you could email your entire class through your roster or gradebook. The disadvantage there is students don't always check their @ltcc.edu email. Some of them, if they're savvy, will change that to forward automatically to Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo Mail or whatever they might have, but it's not always the case. I'm trying to stress this because there's no foolproof method of communication with students. Yet again, another method we could talk about would be text messaging or even voice messaging. You could do this through Google Voice, which is totally free. It allows you to set up an internet-based voice account, basically, that is, just like your cell phone or your home phone plan. But the difference is because it's separate from your device, students don't have access to it in the sense that they would with your cell phone. So they can't call you at 3 in the morning. It's all based here in the cloud on the internet. You can also do text messaging through that program. So it might be one option for you to use as well. Now, again, you maybe have to make it a requirement by assigning points, by having a quiz or something related to that, because if you don't do that, it may be hard to get hold of your students. So a good conversation for us going forward is how to best use the technology available to communicate with students to make sure that we have that open channel of conversation that is so important in our teaching, counseling, and other faculty professional work. Connected to that is this conversation we had in our teaching talk about a student survey, and maybe some opportunities to develop our own survey. Again, it could be a template in Canvas that would allow us to ask students questions. We could have some preset choices like, are you having issues with getting books? Are you having issues affording books? What about financial aid? Are you aware of financial aid and scholarships? And then we could have an other box at the bottom that would allow them to put in some responses. And this way we could create a survey that basically identifies the most pressing student needs out there. And it could be something we could do via other offices on campus. I know that Shauna and Elizabeth, as mentioned here, are doing a mental health series. So that is a clear identification of mental health issues on campus and helping students with those needs and issues. One conversation I think in the future also is mental health and all employees, and how do employees receive mental health counseling if they need it. And there are some opportunities through TSIG. The amount has gone up recently, and kudos to a person on campus who actually attended a TSIG board meeting, and this, from what we can tell, actually affected our mental health coverage, and that actually will probably be going up because of this. You should have received a letter, I think this month or last month, about that increase in mental health coverage. It's always been very low, but it's good to see that there was advocacy on our campus by a staff member and that the board listened and appeared to have changed some of the issues with coverage, and also looking up in-network providers depending on where you live. So really important topic there. So as I'm talking about mental health, again, if mental health issues come up with students, we have a counselor on campus, a part-time person who can work with them. We've been having conversations about how to follow the HIPAA guidelines to make sure that there's privacy in those conversations about mental health with our students. Any questions about that, you can reach out to any of us, including Shauna and Elizabeth, who are also listed here. on this conversation we had about mental health and student issues. So get back to me on the student survey, because I feel like that could be very useful to maybe include in our Canvas shell. I want to have some more communication about this and reach out to the instruction office to see what they think before we do it, to get their guidelines. But it might be a nice idea just to really prioritize some of these issues as they come forward with our students in winter quarter. And then I think really closely connected to this is the second issue on the list, and that is how to route student needs, whether it's a technology need, mental health and wellness, food insecurity, housing issues, financial aid books, accessing library and research and databases. It's always important for us to think about how best to route students on campus. So certainly a lot of this you could reach out to the impacted or affected offices that might relate to this. Connect with Laura Salinas and the Equity Office. If it's a food insecurity issue, connect with Melanie and the library staff if it has something to do with books or loaner books or accessing library databases. So a lot of opportunities, I think, to really clarify on campus how to best route student needs when they come up. I will sometimes get emails, as will Treva, intended for faculty. They come from students, and we always try to figure out how to route those student needs best on campus. So I think that is always a concern going forward. And that does relate to this awareness of out-of-class issues with students, what we could call generally student wellness. We had a really lengthy conversation about this in the teaching talk, and I think it's important to think about the best ways to identify what the needs are. So the social scientist in me would say we first survey or try to gain an ethnographic understanding, an on-the-ground understanding of what students need. So we could do that with surveys. We could do that through our counseling services, some other means on campus, making sure we have a broad coalition of voices that are represented. We could also do that certainly through Student Senate. Once we've determined what some of those needs are, once we have kind of what we know to be the critical mass and the needs in the various categories, we can then talk about identifying how to address those needs via Canvas, via mental health, via counseling services, the library, and so forth. So I think there's a two-step process there, and first understanding what all the student needs are, and then adapting or responding to those student needs via our own methods as instructors or counselors or library faculty. So more to come on that for sure. And then kind of connected to that is just the issue of, in general, not just with students, but responding to messages on campus. There was a conversation about sometimes emails are not responded to on campus, and it makes it harder to do your job. So maybe we could just all check in with each other and say, let's be sure, if email is our way of communicating with colleagues, that we answer important email messages. What I do sometimes is I send out a second email and I say, hey, I didn't hear from you. Could you respond and please let me know about this? So I always try to prioritize it and let the person on the other end know that if I really want their response, then I'll try to highlight that or emphasize that in the body of my message or even in the message subject. Now, if it's a general thing that goes out, like these videos go out to campus when I do my weekly updates to campus, I don't obviously expect everyone to respond. I would be surprised if, less than 1% of people responded, because I'm not asking for a response. But if we're asking for a response, if we need it to do our job better, to make a decision, to collaborate, then I think it is incumbent on us to make sure that we act as professionals do and respond to emails or text messages or whatever means that you use to communicate with colleagues on campus. And I'm mentioning that not because of any specific issues, but this is what came up in our conversation among the participants. So it's, I think, good to address. And then the last issue on here is the idea of virtual best practices. And so we could maybe have some conversations in the future about how to use certain means of communication or certain means of teaching in the best ways. So maybe for you it's Zoom. We just could have a check-in and say, do you have enough information that you need to be effective in Zoom? Or if there's something with Canvas Studio, creation of videos, is there a possibility that we need more trainings for you to do more and to dive a little bit deeper to make sure that you can do what you need to do based on your interests in teaching or whatever it is that you're doing as a professional. So I think it's important to always reach out when questions come up. You can connect with Treva about Canvas issues. You can connect with me about these teaching and learning issues and the technology issues. And I know we're more than willing to help out. So these are just some of the issues that were represented here in Teaching Talk number 32. I hope going forward we can talk about how to address some of these So if any of these are on your radar right now, or you have some ideas about how to deal with these, connect back with me and we can collaborate and perhaps come up with some solutions in the future in terms of additional trainings, technology solutions, or opportunities to connect with folks on campus to better address those needs, whether they're student needs or faculty needs. So thanks for listening, and I'll be back in the future with more teaching and learning videos for you.